Welcome back to part 2 of the fundamentals of stress and how by controlling your fundamental stresses you can improve your training results and overall well-being and health. So in part 1 we discussed the 6 fundamental stressors, what they are, which is psychic emotional, chemical, nutritional, electromagnetic, thermal and physical stress. And we discussed that there's good and bad of both of those, and that we technically want to try and keep our body as low stress as possible, i.e. as much weighted towards those good stresses. So what I want to show you now is how by controlling 5 of those stresses you can improve your training and your well-being through good exercise that's beneficial to you rather than negative. So by controlling the 5 other stresses, your physical stress becomes positive rather than negative. So we're going to try and keep this very simple. I'm no world-renowned specialist on stress. I've just applied a lot of this to myself. And I find that if you keep it simple with clients, especially the general public, we're not talking elite sport, but the general public, you can get good results with just little changes. So what we'll do is we'll start with showing you how I like to think about it to keep it simple. So if we were to just draw a little chart here, say this is your own personal threshold of stress. So when you hit this point, you are not able to deal with that amount of stress. Now remember we said there's the 6 fundamental stressors. So ideally, you want all your stress to remain below this line. Now let's say you're not in particularly good health. Let's say that your nutritional stress is poor, you're not eating the right things at the right time, loading too much on carbs when you're a protein type, eating irregularly, eating foods that you're intolerant to or got allergies to, eating too big or too small portions of food. What we'll say is that's quite a lot of stress on the body. So we'll say that for your nutritional stress, you're somewhere around here. So as you can see, quite near to your threshold of stress, but below it. So if that was your only issue, then your body would probably be able to deal with it. Wouldn't be ideal, but you'd still be able to get some good results from your training. Although we could then delve a bit deeper into the quality of food and so on, but generally speaking, you probably manage. However, it's not just one stress. Remember, we're talking about 6 stressors. So let's take the next one. Let's take chemical stress. Now, of that food that you're eating, a lot of that food is really poor quality. It's processed, loaded with refined sugars, loads of toxins, loads of fungicides, pesticides and the like, very unorganic, very dead food. So that's quite a lot of stress to the body, because not only have you got to take that food in, but you've got to try and break it down and use it. And if it's not very beneficial to you, how can your body use it well? So let's say you've got quite a high stress on chemical stress. Now, even if you just look at that, straight away you can see that if you add this to this, you're going to be over your threshold of stress. Because if we then, just to show you, draw that chemical stress as a little way to think about it, to the nutritional stress, so plus chemical stress, look, already you're over your threshold. Now we've still got the other 3 to think about before we even think about training. So let's just do this quickly. So let's say we've got electromagnetic stress, actually let's use this. So let's say we've got electromagnetic stress down here. Let's say we've got our thermal stress, not too bad, but let's say we've got a little bit of thermal stress. And let's say our emotional stress is pretty good because we like our life, you know, we're quite happy, no issues with family and so on. Although you often don't find that's the case when it's like this, but let's say just for this discussion that the emotional is quite low. Now, so I've done electromagnetic, so electromagnetic, emotional, psychic, just like that. Now if we add all these together, look, we already showed that when we add chemical to nutritional, we're over that. So look at all this, when we start adding all of these, we're going up here off the scale. So way over our threshold. Now the minute we've hit that threshold, any physical stress that we do is going to become a negative. It's going to become further stress. So say you're training 4 times a week, 5 times a week, and you're not seeing any results. Well, straight away, if your training's not good, but we'll give you some slack. Let's say the training is good. Training is quite good, you're training regularly, but because you have to have some stress on the body when you're training, there is going to be some stress from that physical stress. So straight away, you've added, let's put it down as phys. your physical stress is still further stress on here, and you're already over your threshold. So we've got a major problem there, because then what happens is you're already running fast, you're already stressing your body out, your cortisol's through the roof, you're not sleeping well, and then you add that. That's when you're going to get injured. That's when you're not going to see results. That's the person that you see who runs 5 miles every time they go to the gym on the treadmill over 3 years and never changes their shape. And you think, God, this person comes all the time. They never look any different. Well, they're pretty much, I would suggest, not dealing with any of this. And there could be an argument that if they're doing the same thing over and over again, they're probably not dealing with this either, because they're probably just doing the same exercise and not mixing it up. So straight away, to get the results from this, we've got to be looking at all of this. And this is lifestyle. This is where you've got to start looking at your lifestyle. So let's show you how that can work if you get those in check, and how your physical training or your physical exercise will become more beneficial. So I'm going to make this a little easier on myself. So I'm going to put a bit more of a gap between the bottom and the top, but the principles are the same. So here's your threshold up here. There's your threshold of stress. We want to be below here when we're training. So when all 6 are together. So say that you look at that previously and you think, right, I'm going to change my food and my nutritional stress. I'm going to eat regularly. I'm going to eat, within an hour after training. I'm going to eat from a metabolic type. I'm going to have good portion size. I'm not going to go too long between meals, so I start to feel a bit jittery or feel lethargic. I'm going to really start looking at that. So when we start doing that, and our digestion gets in tune, and we start eating regularly, and digestion likes routine, then we can say that we're down here. So straight away we've cut that stress out. The cortisol's not being released so much, the body's not feeling in stress, so it's able to do much better. Then we go chemical stress. Well, part of what we did with the nutritional was we changed what we were eating, and we went to much higher quality food, fresh food we brought by every 2 or 3 days, rather than getting everything that's stored got a long shelf life. We're eating for our metabolic type every single meal with good foods. We're cutting our junk foods down to a minimum. Remember one of my other videos, 80-20, so we're only having that odd bit of naughties around a good diet of good quality foods. So we can say that the chemicals down here. So we've removed quite a lot of that chemical stress. Bear in mind we have to look at water and makeup and things like that as well for chemicals. So I'm taking that into account. I'm just saying you're making good changes. So that's our chemical stress. Thermal stress we can say wasn't too bad anyway, so we keep that down here. Electromagnetic, let's say you start trying to be a little bit more away from you move your alarm away from your head at night, you're on the phone less, you start using speakerphone, you stop putting it up to your head so much, the ELFs, you don't use a microwave, you don't, all those things. You can look into that more, but we've got to scoot through here. So all your electromagnetic negative effects you remove. So then we start down here, electromagnetic, and then the 5th one is obviously going to be our psychic emotional. And we said it wasn't too bad anyway, but because you're eating well, you start to feel better. Maybe you start communicating better. Maybe you deal with some issues maybe you had with some people or with yourself that you hadn't thought about dealing with. So even you drop your emotional stress down a little bit. Now, if we add all these together, let's just, for the sake of this diagram, let's just say when adding all these together, there's our chemical, there's our thermal, there's our electromagnetic, and let's just put a little bit of emotional. Let's say it's a bit bigger than it is, but it's still only taking us to here. Emotional, psychic. Now, as you can see, what we've got now is this whole space before you hit your threshold of stress. Now, that's a good amount to play with, because if you're up over here, you don't probably want to be doing too much exercise, because the exercise you want to be doing is going to be relaxing exercise, working in, maybe going for strolls, walks, not overloading the body, not doing heavy weightlifting and the like, because that's just going to stress the body more. However, when you're down here, look at all this space you've got to play with. So what we can then say is, you can do quite a lot of heavy training. You can maybe, as long as the form's good, as long as you're training well, that exercise could, let's say, be this much. So you even add a training session, you go up on your weights, you start mixing it up a little bit, maybe even get a training buddy, so you set yourself a goal. Remember we said goals were good emotional stress, so you can set yourself a goal that allows you to train really hard, and still, when you add that to here, you're only going to go to there. Let's say this is physical stress. Now what you've got there is a body that's not going to be adrenally fatigued. It's not going to be being fed with really bad quality food. So even though you're training, you're not getting anything from your food to recover. It's not a body that's going to feel run down or over-exercised. However, this is where the key comes in. You've got to learn to balance this. So let's say you get a sudden spike in emotional stress. Here, there's your emotional stress. You get a sudden spike. Let's say it's a bill, your car goes wrong, family issue, something like bereavement, something nasty like that. Now straight away, you add that to here and look at where that's going to take us. Rather than write it in here, I'll do it above. That's your spike. And look, it's taking you over your threshold. So because you've gone over your threshold, you now have to think, oh wow, can I feel a difference? Is my training not going as well? Am I feeling run down? Am I feeling exhausted? Is my mind not on the game? If that's the case, you need to bring yourself back down. Now, there's a number of ways you can do that. You can start looking at these, but you've kind of seen that you've done a lot with that. Now, you can get more focused, so you could say, right, I'm going to be really strict with my diet because I don't want to change my training. Or I'm going to, get in a new water filter because I don't want to change my training. But it may get to the point where you need to change your training. So what then has to happen is you need to lower this exercise. So this needs to cut down to about here. And you start doing this much exercise rather than the whole thing. So you might go to 3 times a week, or you might drop down to a more maintenance style program, which will drop you back below that line. So that cumulative stress is once again below that line. Now there may get times in life where you're up there and you're up there for a while, so you've really got to think about how you're balancing this, and you've got to listen to your body. And that's when we can be starting to get adrenally fatigued, so you might need to think about a break, a time out, go on a holiday, just ease up on the work a little bit, try and take some stress away, even go and talk to someone if it's a bereavement type scenario, go and see a counsellor. But as you can see, this is how you can control your life and your stress beneficially for you. This is what I try to teach my clients. Some are better at it than others, got to be said, but I think the more you do this, the more in control you'll feel of your own life at those moments when you need to be. And most importantly, it's going to give you those results from your training as long as your training is good and as long as you're being given good advice. So bear that in mind. Hopefully you'll find that really beneficial and helpful. Remember that your physical stress, in my opinion, is that cherry on top. So you can do more of that when you control everything else. Don't think that you're massively stressed, you're eating rubbish, that all you can do is go and train it off because it relieves my stress. It may be relieving you psychologically, but how's about everything else? Is it relieving you enough of your stress? So take that away with you. Good luck. I hope that you can find some beneficial results from that. Always love to hear your comments. Been having some lovely comments come through, so if you do find you get some benefit from that, then please let me know. Also, obviously, if you do have any specific issues, and always clear with your doctor first, let them know that you're going to make some changes to your stress management. I'm sure they'll be very pleased, but if you have anything complicated, then always want to be monitored. So be well, de-stress, control that stress, train well, be primal.